In 1995, Umberto Eco, novelist, semiotician, and one of the most precise minds of the 20th century, published a short essay that would become one of the most cited texts of the 21st. He called it Ur-Fascism, eternal fascism, the fascism that never truly died, but merely changed its costume between historical acts. Eco had lived under Mussolini. He knew fascism not as an abstraction, but as the air he breathed as a child. And precisely because of that, he understood something that comfortable democracies tend to forget. Fascism does not always arrive in uniform. It does not always announce itself with a manifesto. It arrives in the language of common sense, in the celebration of ignorance, in the cult of action over thought, in the eternal search for an enemy. Eco identified 14 features of what he called Ur-Fascism. Not all of them need to be present simultaneously. As he wrote himself, it is enough that one of them takes root, and the rest will follow, waiting in the shadows. Tonight, we are not here to insult. We are not here to reduce a complex political phenomenon to a bumper sticker. We are here to do something far more unsettling. To think. To apply Eco's scalpel to one of the most discussed and least understood figures in contemporary political history. The question is not whether Donald Trump is a monster. The question is whether he is, in the precise philosophical sense of the term, a fascist. Let us begin. Eco's first feature of Ur-Fascism is what he calls the cult of tradition. The fascist worldview is not oriented toward the future. It is obsessed with a mythological past that must be recovered. A golden age that was stolen, a greatness that was lost through betrayal, weakness, or contamination by foreign elements. Make America great again. The slogan is not merely political rhetoric. It is, in the strictest philosophical sense, a traditionalist invocation. It presupposes a lost paradise. It does not specify when America was great or for whom, because the power of the myth lies precisely in its vagueness. The golden age is always just beyond the horizon of memory, pure enough to desire, vague enough to never be questioned. Eco notes that traditionalism is necessarily hostile to modernism, not technology, but the Enlightenment idea that reason and critical thinking are instruments of human progress. The traditionalist does not want to be enlightened. He wants to be reassured. The second feature follows almost inevitably from the first, the rejection of rationalism. Eco calls this the irrationalism of action over thought. For the Ur-Fascist, thinking is a form of weakness. Experts are suspects. Universities are enemies. Science is a conspiracy of the elite against the common man. We have seen this pattern with a clarity that should disturb any serious observer. The systematic dismantling of scientific consensus on climate, on vaccines, on epidemiology, the contempt for expertise dressed as the voice of the people against the tyranny of knowledge, the elevation of instinct, of gut feeling, of what everyone knows over what can be demonstrated and verified. Hannah Arendt, writing in The Origins of Totalitarianism, identified this assault on truth as central to authoritarian movements. The goal, she argued, is not to make people believe the lie. The goal is to make people unable to distinguish the lie from the truth, to produce a state of permanent epistemological confusion in which only the leader's voice provides orientation. When a political figure tells his followers that what they see is not what they see, that the numbers are false, that the institutions cannot be trusted, that only he tells the truth. He is not merely lying. He is destroying the very ground on which truth can stand. Eco's third feature is the cult of action for action's sake. Thinking is suspicious. Culture is decadent. The intellectual is the enemy. What matters is movement, energy, the performance of power. Watch any Trump rally. The content is almost secondary to the spectacle. The repetition, the rhythm, the crowd as a single organism responding to the conductor. Walter Benjamin, in his prescient analysis of fascism, identified exactly this mechanism, what he called the aestheticization of politics. Politics transformed into theater, into spectacle, into a quasi-religious experience in which the crowd does not think, but feels. Benjamin wrote that fascism gives the masses not rights, but expression. Not power, but the sensation of power. The rally is not a political meeting, it is a ritual. And like all rituals, its function is not to inform but to bind, to create the intoxicating feeling of belonging to something larger than oneself. The fourth feature Eco identifies is perhaps the most recognizable, the obsession with a plot. The Ur-Fascist worldview requires an enemy, not merely an opponent, but a conspirator, a hidden force that works in the shadows to destroy the true people, the deep state, the fake news media, the global elites, the radical left. The list of conspirators is long and remarkably consistent across different historical iterations of fascist rhetoric. What changes are the names. What remains constant is the structure, the idea that the true people are pure, besieged, and betrayed. Eco notes something crucial here. The enemy must be simultaneously powerful and weak. Powerful enough to justify the fear and the struggle. Weak enough to be eventually defeated by the superior force of the movement. This logical contradiction does not weaken the rhetoric. It strengthens it, because it places the follower in a state of permanent alert, permanent mobilization. The fifth feature is the most philosophically precise, and perhaps the most dangerous. The contempt for the weak combined with the worship of the leader as the voice of the people. Plato, in Book 8 of the Republic, described the birth of the tyrant with an accuracy that reads today as prophecy. The tyrant, Plato wrote, does not emerge from oligarchy or aristocracy. He emerges from democracy, from its excesses, from the dissolution of all authority, from the moment when freedom becomes indistinguishable from license. The tyrant begins as a champion of the people. He speaks their language. He shares their resentments. He identifies their enemies. He is at first not a king, but a protector. But the protector, Plato warns, always becomes the master. Because the logic of protection requires the permanent existence of threat, and the manufacture of threat requires the concentration of power in the one who protects. The tyrant, Plato concludes, is the man most enslaved to his own appetites, and therefore the man least capable of governing others. He rules not through wisdom, but through fear, not through justice, but through the manipulation of desire and resentment. We could continue through all 14 of Eco's features. We could examine the cult of heroic death, the machismo, the selective populism that speaks in the name of the people while systematically undermining their interests. We could spend hours tracing each thread, but the philosophical argument does not require exhaustion. It requires precision. The question was never whether Trump wears a black shirt or quotes Mussolini. Fascism in the 21st century does not require those costumes. It requires only the structure, the mythological past, the contempt for reason, the manufactured enemy, the aestheticization of politics, the leader as the singular voice of a pure and besieged people. By Umberto Eco's own criteria developed not in a partisan think tank, but by a man who breathed fascist air as a child and spent his life understanding it. Donald Trump does not merely resemble a fascist. He instantiates, with remarkable fidelity, the philosophical structure that Eco identified as the eternal face of fascism. This is not an insult, it is a diagnosis, and the first step toward treating any disease is the willingness to name it correctly. The tribunal has spoken.